My area of specialization is parallel distributed computing and software engineering. So, having interest in parallel distributed computing, it has always been in the mind that when we talk about various models of parallel computing, there are certain things that are realizable today. There are certain things that have great promise, but not necessarily realizable in near future. We have heard about multiple attempts in terms of computing models when the data flow computing model came. Similarly, we had great news about the quantum computers as well, that these types of machines are going to be a reality. And when we say computers, then we have a picture in our mind, the type of machines that we have for this purpose. And there were very encouraging remarks by scientists, basically from the domain of physics, that classical computers will never be able to simulate exactly quantum mechanical systems. Quantum mechanical operations are something that we perform on routine. Like if I have to search for an element, an array, and if the array is written here on a sheet of paper, my eyes can look at it, and in parallel, the mind can find whether that number is present there or not. So as a routine, the quantum mechanical system sort of computing that we are aware of, we have ourselves been doing, whether machines can do that. The classical computers would not be able to. In very few cases, they would be able to simulate what quantum mechanical systems do. If the physical basis for a computer is an explicitly quantum system for whose description the classical approximation fails, Benioff showed in 1982 how time dependence of quantum systems helps simulating classical computers based on Boolean logic. So these were two things that were very interesting. First, that the present day machines cannot mimic either the working or the power of quantum machines, quantum mechanical system, but at the same time, if we make use of the quantum systems and we make use of the time dependence of quantum systems, we can show everything that is there in the normal Boolean logic that is made use of for the purposes of the present day computing machines that we have, the normal computing machines. So that is what is the question that we are coming at. You see, there are only three things that normally scientists would be interested in. Those can be described as issues, challenges, and problems. Issues are something that academicians and professionals and possibly society also are concerned with. So these are matters of concern. Like machines should be reliable, it is a concern. When we start addressing an issue, we come across multiple challenges that need to be taken. And when we start addressing one of these challenges, then we come across multiple small and big problems that need solution. So factually, any research or investigative study has to have a thread starting from the issues, going through the challenges and reaching up to the problem. So issues, challenges, and problems, and factually, when you start addressing an issue, then the constraints are something that pose challenges. You have to address an issue, there can be multiple solutions to them, but there may be constraints. Like in engineering, the constraints are of the type that cost that you have. The technological constraints may be there. The technology permits something or doesn't permit. The technology may not be available. So that is how issues, challenges, and problems are related. That is what I am going to do today. That what are the issues, challenges, and problems that from the algorithmic point of view and software point of view need to be solved. Because as we will go further, we will find that in quantum computing, people have deposed a great deal of faith. Whenever a new quantum computing mechanism is available, it hits the news lines also. And every now and then we have been saying that within the next 20 years it would be there. And many enthusiasts in the years, say, 90s and 2000 had said that by 2020, the quantum computing machine should be there. There are two interesting things in these types of discussions. One is that many a times when we start exploring the ideas related to certain new venture, then we may not necessarily be able to obtain the real answer to that. But the path of exploration helps us in understanding in a better fashion many things that were otherwise not possible. That is the type of discussion that I am going to pursue now, which would help us in understanding that in how many ways the quantum algorithmic approaches help us in understanding in a better fashion the processes of solutions to problems that we have today, that we are working out with the present day machines. And what are the challenges, what are the constraints that are available, and what are the problems that need to be solved for this purpose. The type of computing that we have is based on the von Neumann machines, and mostly it is a control flow organization in which, as we are all aware that you write programs, you get some input data, and you wish to exercise a controlled execution of all the computational statements involved in the solution process. There is a controlled execution. When it comes to writing program, everybody knows that it has been factually very difficult to be able to understand what it requires to write a program. For every learner who has learned first, what to write first, what should be the first statement, obviously after declarations, etc. And very soon people realize when they start learning how to write programs that something that you can do first means such a statement in the program that can consume the inputs only, it does not require any intermediate result, merits to be the first statement in the program. So factually there can be multiple statements that merit to be first in the program. Any of them can be written as the first statement. Then you have second set of statements. The intermediate results that are obtained, that are produced by the first set type statements, can be consumed by the second set statements and some input. So in this fashion what happens, the programs that we write, they keep weaving the result by generating intermediate results and using them. And that is why there is a great need of memory. It is not that memory is a very great thing that we should have. Normally we say that it has got 64 GB memory or 128 GB memory. It is not a merit of a machine to have memory. It is a limitation of a machine just because the machine cannot operate on all the data simultaneously. So it has no option but to retain the whole program in the memory and to retain the intermediate results for further uses by the steps of the computation in the memory. So that is what is the idea between control flow and data flow that I would look at first, because there is a great similarity between the two, the data flow models that we talked about and the quantum computing methods that we come across. The data flow computing models also had a great promise. What brought data flow computing model was not a data flow computing machine to us, but what data flow computing model brought to us was to understand more properly how the inherent parallelism can be exploited in the solution processes to the problem. There is something known as a time and a space compromise. You can make use of a small hardware repetitively many times to arrive at a solution to the problem. That is what would mean that you are expanding in time. If you make use of more hardware, then it is likely that the time taken by the solution process would be lesser. It is just like putting one person on a job and putting more than two or more people on a job and expecting that the job would get completed early. It doesn't always happen also. And that is why in marriages, etc., when there are children, they have to go for some work, we always say that never go more than 2 people. Or when we find that it is a responsibility of many people, everybody's responsibility is nobody's responsibility. So there are reasons that communication amongst the labor putting forces, if it overweighs the computation, then the efficiency of the machine also goes down. But the time and space compromise is understood in this form. So as I said, that expansion in time through repetitive use of tiny hardware can be there. It is just like, as we are all aware, those who study computer science, that there is an arithmetic logic unit which doesn't even know how to subtract or multiply or divide. It only knows how to add. We have got only an adder, right? And that adder is repetitively used for synthesizing either subtraction or multiplication or division. That is what is the idea of expanding in time. Factually, there was a great deal of discussion in engineering disciplines since quite long that if you require a machine where there should be n elements and all should operate all the time, then the reliability will be equal to the product of the reliabilities of all the individual elements, and it will go down. So if you have a small hardware and more use of it, you have more faith on your mind, so the program would be able to exploit the tiny hardware and would be more reliable. But not always. There are problems in the software also, reliability point of view. Similarly, expansion in space is possible through multiple replication of simple sequential hardware. And that is what we know as parallel computers, that we have got multiple, or in that sense, the multi-core machines that we have today. That instead of having one compute engine on a chip, you have multiple such cores that are available, or multi-context CPUs, when you have got more number of program counters, so multiple threads, etc., can execute on the same processor at the same simultaneously. That is what is expansion in space through multiple replication of simple sequential hardware. So as I said in the beginning, that programs that we write today, they impose a sequential ordering. That is the, you see, what is a calculation and what is a computation. When we have 2 operands A and B, and we get some result C out of this, that is a calculation. If we make use of C as input of the next calculation, and if we can perform, say, D is equal to C into E, and factually we find another result, and we look at the result and decide what should be the next operation, then factually we are imposing an ordering on the total computation process. And that is what we learn. Factually, something that should have not been there. Our mind does not operate that way. Our mind operates a little in different fashion. But we have forced ourselves to read the computational processes and express them, imposing sequential ordering for everything that is parallelizable. That is what is learning programming. We say a great thing that I have learned programming. Means I have found the way of making everything sequential that could be parallel, because the machine cannot do it. So the exercise of programming imposes sequential ordering and make use of memory for intermediate results that are to be used by the subsequent operations, that are to be used, the memory is used for retaining the program also there. Data flow computing, on the other hand, makes use of infinitely many processing elements. We assume that there are infinitely many processing elements. That was the basic theory behind data flow computing model. If we have got infinitely processing element, then the other important things that comes with data flow computing models, that there is no concept of memory at all. Just like memory is very important in the control flow computing, in data flow computing, memory is not there at all. Every operation of the solution process is assigned to one of the processing elements of the whole system. Now, some of the processing elements, as I said in the case of programs, would be consuming only the input operand, whereas the other processing elements may be ready to consume the input and maybe some intermediate result that has been generated by some other processing element. So in a way, in this way, what you can find is that programming as per the data flow computing model is nothing but to decide or describe the interconnections amongst these processing elements. And the great power of the processing elements of the data flow computing model is that a data flow computing processing element fires only when the operands are available. So if the input operands are already available, all the first processing elements should fire, and the other processing elements that have to wait for an intermediate result to be generated by other processing elements, they will keep waiting for the other output to be generated and to be consumed as input. So what happens is that here you do not require memory. The processing elements are assigned operations, and without any need of any memory, the 100% parallelism in the solution process would be exploitable. So these are the two extremes. One is the data flow computing model that doesn't talk about memory. It does not have a notion of memory. And the other is the sequential computing model that we have known. An individual PE fires when both the operands are available, otherwise it waits. Simple. Multiple such PEs can be interconnected by providing inputs as outputs of what it depends on, and consequently we get 100% parallelism and no requirement of memory is there. So these two extremes of the models are there. So data flow computing models were very helpful in identifying the parallelism that are available in the solution processes. The solution processes are something that do not depend on the machine that we have to make use of. Machines may be different. So the other important point about the machines that we are using and the machines that we may have when the quantum computers would be around as general purpose computing machines, and whether we should wait for quantum computers to be general purpose machines has to be looked at from the, again let us try to contrast the existing machines and the machines that we are expecting. The present day machines that are von Neumann machines, they are known as stored, they are known to be based on a stored program concept. The concept is very simple, but the consequences are great. What the stored program concept says, that the programs and data both reside in the same memory. It is very simple. We all understand they do reside in the same memory. But what we need to understand that how does it make a difference? So for a commoner, it is a simple difference that if you have a machine, you have got a memory. If you are playing a chess playing software, the machine becomes a chess player. If you are having a word processing program, word processor, if you have got music being played here, then it is a music player, or it becomes a theater sort of thing, whatever type of program you have. So behavior of the machine is defined by the type of program that you have. So it is not that all that is bad only about the machines that we have today. And possibly for not all types of problems we require quantum computers. That is an important point that needs to be noted. There are many things that can be done without quantum computers, and we are quite happy without that. So, and there is another important thing that comes, and there are other consequences also of the stored program concept. Because if data and program both reside in the same memory, you can write a program that can treat a program as a data and modify it on fly. Something that is very much required. And there are certain types of codes that need not be modified during computation. They are known as pure codes. Like if you have a compiler, you would like as many instances of compiler appearing to people as many users are there on the multi-computer system. So that is a separate thing. So there are many possibilities that exist just because we have a stored program concept. There is another important point that we have learned from this basics are where that the idea of the Turing machine and computability. Not all types of problems computers can claim to solve today. Or even we do not know the ways of solving all types of problems. Like when two people marry, whether they would experience a divorce, we cannot decide. We don't have an algorithm for that. But if there is a method, if there is a mechanical solvability possibility, then if we can propose a Turing machine for that, there is a computability that is available. And related to that, we brought forward something known as algorithmic complexity. That we started talking about if the problem size grows, how the time taken by the algorithm that will implement the solution to the problem will grow. And we came to understanding of classes like NP class that would have polynomial time. All polynomial time algorithms are good. Those cannot be polynomial time solution processes. There we have difficulty. And then people started realizing the question was whether such algorithms, whether such problems can ever be solved in polynomial time on some machine. And that is what brought, you see, as I said, just like the quantum computing would bring more understanding regarding solutions to problems. Maybe solutions, because general purpose computers may not be available, but understanding more and more how the solutions to the problems would be obtained, that would be possible by the quantum computing studies and understanding. And that is why it merits to be part of the curricula at various levels in institutions. That will help us in understanding if people start talking about algorithmic solutions to the problems quantum way. So, the non-deterministic machine, what people started understanding, that can there be a polynomial time algorithm? For those problems for which we do not have a polynomial time algorithm on sequential machines, on the von Neumann type of machines, can ever be there a polynomial time algorithm? And then when everybody did put too much of effort and nobody could obtain, then people started realizing, can there be a polynomial time algorithm, but not necessarily on the deterministic machine that we make use of. And then people come with the idea of, one can generalize, not necessarily non-deterministic machine, is that if you just consider there are infinitely many processing elements that can operate simultaneously on some problem. And simple problem, searching for an element in an array. If there are n elements, right, and we are searching for an element, if we have got n processors, if all the processors can be made responsible for one element each, then they would all compare with the input element simultaneously, and in the constant time you will have the result of the search. If it is there, it will be there, otherwise it will not be there. But that is why the parallel algorithms were criticized also, and parallel algorithms were evaluated otherwise, not only in terms of the time that would take, but the resources that they would consume, means the number of processing elements that they would consume. So this type of, and people then further divided that there can be two classes of problems like NP complete, and we said that NP complete problems are the problems that if any one of them can be solved in polynomial time, it is only possible if others would also be solved in polynomial time. And what we factually tried to say by this was that the exploration, you see, again led to a very interesting understanding, not regarding whether there should be a polynomial time algorithm or not, but the basic idea was to understand what is the inherent problem in all problems that are of NP type. That if that problem can be solved in polynomial time, all these problems can also be solved. And that was the idea of reduction and reducibility, that whether you can solve these problems through some other problem. And that is what led us to decision problems or CNF satisfiability problem, that if that, because factually that problem is hidden there. So whenever there is a problem in which the input size is n and you have got 2 to the power n possibilities, and all 2 to the power n possibilities need to be examined and evaluated, you will have the nature NP complete. So all NP complete problems are NP hard also. But NP hard will include some other problems for which we do not have algorithms today. Those problems will also be there. Or that cannot be shown to be solvable, or for which mechanical solvability is not there through the satisfiability problem, through the reduction, to the decision problems. If it is not there, then they remain in NP hard, but they are not NP complete. And that is where the decision problems have their roles. Another important study that we have had was the lower bound theory when you are a student of algorithmics. You see, one can analyze algorithms and try to know more and more about how good they are, or how two algorithms are attempting in the similar fashion but maybe with different tricks. Like, if you look at the problem of sorting, a straightforward sorting algorithm would take order n square comparisons. And it is quite understandable, it is very simple, that every element has to be compared with every other element. So there are n elements, you get order n square algorithm. But there are sorting algorithms that would take only order n log n. Right? Means, order n log n algorithms are those algorithms that avoid certain comparisons that are done in order n square algorithms. That is the only idea. There may be many order n log n algorithms there are. They all do the same thing. They avoid the comparisons. So what you can look at is, you can start finding out, you compare how the problem difficulty, where does the difficulty of the problem lies. So there is a very good thing in mathematical sciences, that if sometimes it is difficult to solve the problem, many a times you can solve the complement of the problem that may be easy, and then you can come back. That is what all the transformations have been doing, right? So there is a theory that is lower bound theory, and what lower bound theory looks at, it doesn't deal with any algorithm that is available there. It tries to look at the problem that needs to be solved and tries to find out what would be the characteristic of the best algorithm that would be there for a problem to be solved. Like, if you are multiplying two n cross n matrices, what is the best time that you can have for matrix multiplication? So it says, because n square individual elements need to be computed, so there would not be any algorithm that can be better than order n square. We know 2 to the point some, this thing 2.37, the algorithms are available, Strassen's algorithm for matrix multiplication. But you can know that how much it can be reduced. So all these theories, what I am trying to say, whether it is a data flow computing model or the algorithmic analysis from the point of view, either the sequential or from the parallel, and same is the case of the quantum computing also. They help us in understanding the solution processes. That is one major thing. But let us again, where there are many profits, there are many benefits that are there with the quantum computing machines. And that is why it attracts us heavily, that we should have it. Though it is every time you would come, you would find the scientists would say that in the next 20 years it will be there. So 2020 was the time. I think not many years are left in 2020. So we can give 20 more years to it. Maybe by 2030 it would be there. But whether we should have a general purpose quantum computing machine, maybe it is not required to have. We can have a special purpose computing machines. Doubling a classical computer's register length roughly doubles classical computing power. But adding just one bit to a quantum computer's register doubles quantum computing power. So it attracts us. But adding one bit, is that easy? The theory of computation, the problem is, what we have been thinking about, as I said in the beginning, that the human mind routinely performs quantum computation model. Routinely. The whole world works on the quantum mechanical system behavior methodology. We have made a machine that should not work as that. And we have made it to behave in such a fashion so that it solves multiple hour problems. We are able to watch movie, we are able to listen music. So there are many problems for which we do not require quantum machines. But there are some for which we require. But obviously, the Turing machines are not adequate description of computability. That point we have to keep in mind. And once that comes, the new theory of computation needs to be built. Maybe there are certain types of problems that we were thinking that are not solvable as today, for which algorithms do not exist. There may be some possibility that may emerge out of that. The idea of algorithms, if we learn from data computing, data flow computing model, the memory is not required. When we talk about algorithmic solution, we have sequentiality in mind. We want to say the order in which the operations are to be performed. So, one has to worry about what should be the theory of computation that should be behind new type of machine. Means, what is happening is, if we keep thinking with the mindset of the sequential computing, and we want to have a model that is not based on memory, etc., are we proceeding in the right direction? There is a great philosophical saying that it is very difficult to locate a black cat in a dark room, and it is impossible to locate a black cat in a dark room if it is not there. So that is what it leads to, that if we keep thinking in those terms, whether it leads to something, so do we require, so when the quantum computing machine should be there, then we would require that the theory of computation is there, the algorithm, the science, algorithmics possibly, not algorithms I should have written, and the programming languages, whether we will require, whether the programming language would mean writing programs that would be stored somewhere. Just like in data flow computing model, programming means something else. The specification models known to us are all classical. The challenge is to build quantum computer counterparts of all these, or not, maybe not all these. Rather, we should get rid of some of the notions that were existing with the sequential computing models and come out with newer types of concepts that need to be understood and coined and understood. Today, mostly we deal with the quantum programs that are based on quantum gates. Just recall the machine language programming or assembly language programming, when people used to write programs in machine language or assembly language. So if all the algorithms, or you just look at the bitonic sort, when you are making use of comparators and talking about the sorting algorithm, whether we would be able to gain much if we are talking only in terms of the gates, etc. Writing all the algorithms, all the problem solving methodologies only in terms of gates, etc. So we do not today write programs in machine assembly language, for that matter, in terms of and or not gates. So in this way, we obviously require languages, the functional imperative languages for quantum computing and problem solving methodologies. And again, it has to be kept in mind that just like in the data flow computing model case, the programs were not of the type that we write today, what the programs would mean, and whether proceeding in this way, dealing with the classical method of writing programs, etc., would be useful. So what we require, John Clark and Susanne Stepney from University of York in quantum software engineering. You see, the very interesting part is what is done in quantum computing is that if you have a register, say 3-bit register, then you have got 8, all the possible universes existing simultaneously. When an operation is performed, it is performed on all of them simultaneously. But if we have the classical, thinking of the classical computational model, then we are thinking in terms of storing in the register. And then performing operation on the register means there is some other way of arranging methodologies for making operations to be performable on that. Whether that type of model is good enough, whether that type of thinking is good enough, whether it is not required to drive out from the mind the whole methodology of the classical sequential computing and think about the quantum computing ways of carrying out the business. So, universal quantum Turing machine that we should worry about, the quantum algorithmic complexity that is already being talked about, assembly level and high level Q languages, if we draw parallel to the sequential, that is what things would come, but whether we should have a question whether that should be the way. If we talk about programs that would be running on machines and in this way, the understandings and the learnings that have come from the data flow computing model would suggest that possibly the types of programs that we have been knowing would not be the case in this case. So whether quantum compilers should be required, quantum reasoning system, quantum protocols, say for specification languages for quantum protocols, and high level structuring techniques may be required for this purpose, architectures for software. There are many issues that still remain to be solved. So all the issues, challenges and problems that start from the algorithmic sciences, from the algorithmics, that lead to the study of software sciences, they need to be addressed, and it seems there is a long journey. And what, to my mind, it occurs that just like at some point of time that we had vector coprocessor or co-processing elements, it will be a good idea to go for a special purpose quantum processing systems that may be used for special problems that need to be solved. And for rest of the problems that can be solved by the present day machines, there can be a method by which a machine that is a hybrid machine that consists of the present day machines and makes use of a quantum computing co-processor or an accessory that can do the job for various purposes that may be there, and where they are required they can be put together at the same time, may be more useful. That is what all I had to submit, and I hope that in our age itself we come across either a full-fledged quantum computing machine, or we get certain types of accessories or co-processors that can help us in dealing with tough problems, the difficult problems, and we increase the capability of the present day computing machines so that the normal activities as they are being carried out, they can be done by the machines that we have had for so many years. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
You're talking of hybrid computers.
Yes.
As better than the quantum computer by itself.
No, I am not saying better. What I am saying, that present day machines are good in doing many jobs. But there are certain types of jobs that demand heavy computational this thing. The computational load of the jobs may be very heavy. There, if there are certain types of co-process sorts of things or accessories are available that are always required for that problem to be solved, and the machine is to do that problem only all the time, then they can be associated with it. Because what is happening with the quantum computing solutions is that for every type of algorithm you are inventing a hardware sort of thing, because you are deciding the algorithm in terms of the quantum gates, etc. So for making a machine, and that is why the machine has not been realizable as of today. I mean, the commercial availability of the machines I am talking about. In the laboratories, obviously these things are existing, but the commercial availability has not been possible. And that is why most of the interest still remains in the field of quantum people from chemistry and physics. If it has to be a realizable machine, it will be a good idea to proceed in humble manner with a co-processor accessory sort of thing, start getting done, and that was the case in many ways. Like the graphics co-processor unit, the maths co-processor unit used to be separately available in the computing machines earlier. Now all are integrated. And as we advance with the availability of quantum hardware, that can miniaturization may also be possible. And if it can be made available in a processor, obviously that would be the best thing to happen. But what I am saying that every time we are saying that 20 more years, and unable to build in true sense a pure quantum computing machines. So there is nothing bad in starting with a hybrid machine, and then as and when the physical realization of the quantum hardware would be possible, that can be taken up.
I would like to just ask a very different kind of a question. See, is there also the market, the way we have all the processors getting built by different corporates and Intel, for instance. So there seems to be a very strong lobby of these corporates, perhaps not encouraging the activities in the area of quantum computing. Do you agree to this?
I don't think so, because if it is really realizable for as a general purpose computing machine, they are the one who would benefit from it. I mean, as of today, there are not many companies that are competing in this. There are very few. There is a good deal of monopoly. So if it is easily realizable, they would be very happy to do it. But at the same time, partially you are correct, partly you are correct, that they don't find it very interesting to invest heavily in this. Yes, because in immediate future it is not going to be available. And that is why the academic pursuits have been more important. And there have been certain organizations, obviously IBM, etc., some companies have been there that invested heavily in the very beginning, and that is why more of realizations happen. But even then the idea is very good. As I said, the study of the NP class, etc., or the data flow computing model, whether machines were there or not, whether polynomial time algorithms we have today because of that or not is not important. But the total understanding of the computer science, the interest of people in solving problems, in learning techniques of solving problems. You see, a sharpening of intellect has taken place by studying these things. And that is why at least In the curricula, immediately quantum computing should be brought in, so that that sharpening of intellect in terms of the total exploitable parallelism is identified. When you start thinking at the quantum gate level, the way problem can be solved, you understand the inherent parallelism that is there in the solution problem. And maybe you don't end up with a quantum computing machine performing that solution, but you end up having a good algorithm in place of the older ones that you have had. So that is a good idea to start with, and that is why I think the institutions that would bring in course work at the PhD level, or maybe some introductory course at master's or bachelor's level, they are going to have their students graduating with more sharpened intellect in that context.